equipment, snow plow equipment to put on it, as opposed to stuff we've been buying because the lead time is so long. We ordered a truck, it was in July, and we expect to have it in service now, maybe April or May. So it takes so much time to get the chassis delivered, moved up to Christeel, and outfitted with equipment that we're looking into some different options. So he said that in his review of this snow equipment, it's looking very, very similar, more than it has in the past in terms of design and construction and quality. So this is still tentative, but the estimate shows about $10,000 less for the snow equipment. So after, if we can get support to move forward today, Mark will refine these numbers with Don's, and it'll probably be in total similar number as the last truck we bought. So the total estimate right now, $221,000 or so. So I guess at this point, I'm looking for your support to move forward, refine these numbers, and bring a resolution to approve the purchase next week or the following, depending on how quickly we can get final numbers put together.
And this was in this
fiscal year. So they've committed to getting the chassis and outfitting the equipment before the end of the fiscal year. So I guess it makes a pretty big difference using Henderson equipment as opposed to Monroe snow equipment.
Their time frame is much longer, is that what you're saying?
Right, the Monroe equipment, for some reason, even in the meantime, when we had 6 months delay of ordering the chassis, when we brought it, couldn't even bring it directly to Chrysler because they still didn't have the snow equipment. So I'm not sure what the reason is for the lag time, but it makes it very difficult to try to budget, purchase, and receive and pay for a piece of equipment when it takes so long to get it through the process of being purchased and built and upfitted.
The equipment is similar as far as usability and
That's what I understand, yeah. He said that over time, they used to be, much lighter, and over time they've gotten to be pretty similar in construction and quality. So time will tell after we order it and see how it ages, but I guess from the reviewing the engineering specs and all that, it appears to be pretty similar.
Pricing is similar also.
Yeah, the pricing on the Monroe equipment was $115,000, and the initial estimate, it's tough to get these apples to apples, but based on the initial estimate, $105,000 for the Henderson equipment.
Cheaper and more timely, I guess that's.
Yeah, so like I said, once they can compare apples to apples, he'll refine the quote, and I assume it'll go up a little bit just to make sure it's exactly what we want. But
So you just want a motion to go forward?
Not a motion.
don't need a motion, just I guess I'm looking for any questions you have or objections, and go ahead and talk through it.
Well, I would support it. I just want to make sure when you're switching companies, that you're getting apples for apples.
Yeah, I mean,
That's good quality that you're getting.
right. We've had good luck, as I understand it, really good luck with Monroe, so be good to make sure that we're getting the same quality. And so Mark will do his, final review of all that stuff and work with the dealer to make sure it's exactly what we need, fits on the truck, and all that stuff lines up.
Unfortunately, the actual test will be after it's been used for a while.
Yeah. But we've had really good luck with these Western Star trucks, I understand, so that at least would be the same. And, keeping the truck rolling is a pretty important part, so.
Okay.
Other than that, Anything else more on the truck then?
I do have a concern on roads.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
The 400th coming from Leland to 150th at least is really narrow, and I don't believe the snow has been pushed back in a proper manner.
Far enough?
And like, say, Sunday when it was melting, the road really narrowed up to where you couldn't meet people
Sure.
on the road because of the soft conditions. Everything was melting down towards the road.
Yeah,
I guess it should, in my opinion, it should have been pushed back to start with when they came back at some point, and it's still sitting there melting.
we'll look into it. I was going to mention that we have weather in the 40s, which is probably better than the 60s here for how fast things are melting, and I'm starting to see the kind of peaks of the road starting to dry out from the top down, which is a good sign, I think, too. But there are some roads worse than others, and I think we just gotta encourage the farmers and the road users to try to plan their heavy operations for the mornings when it's frozen, and for roads that are looking dry, and to limit traffic on those roads where there's some snow melting and causing issues. Try to limit it on those roads, because there's not a whole lot we can do with them at this point. The strategy has been to try to move end-to-end blading further into the spring, so that we don't end up with kind of a fluffed up surface that turns to soup when they get wet. So you won't likely see us blading end-to-end for quite some time yet. We may be doing a little bit of touch-ups here if the ruts get really, really bad. But again, there's not much we can do with them that will have lasting benefit until we see some frost kind of come out of the ground, because otherwise that water on the surface has nowhere to go but up. So every time you drive a vehicle over it, you pound the rock and gravel down, and the water's got to come up. And that's what causes the frost boils out there that everybody sees. So limiting traffic, I think, is the biggest thing we can do for it. I know that's pretty hard to do, especially for people with grain contracts and hog feed to bring in and market hogs to go out, all that stuff. I know, but better we can plan the.
Makes you feel any better when you decide not to call. May or so.
That sounds pretty good for the sake of the roads.
Yep. Are you, anything else for secondary roads? Okay. Move on to number 10, 9:30 a.m. Consider for approval options for DD11 main tile improvement project.
I have more letters to read.
Okay.
So I read, Jim Franzen sent one from the Sunday family, and they would support the 1-inch coefficient. Jim Amberson, realizes he's not in a voting position, but he would like the 1/2 inch because of what's gonna happen downstream. Judy Amberson, again, knows that she's not a voter, but she would also like the 1/2 inch because of the water that will come down. Read to you before, Rasmussen Family Tree would like the 1/2 inch. Kevin Sabine is downstream, and he would also vote for the 1/2 inch. Norm Howen is a 1/2 inch. Bill Swearingen is a 1/2 inch. Ron and Karen Larson is a 1/2 inch. The Hawkeye Land Company is a 1/2 inch, and those are just what I've received.
Scott?
I feel like I should mention too, I had a discussion with Mark last week, and I thought the story maybe tells the story. So he said one of the roads that crosses this district used to have one culvert underneath the road. The road crosses the drainage district. And he said it served well. There it was plenty of capacity, and as the tile got progressively worse, we started having water go over the road. So they've added culverts to that location since then. So he said his understanding of why that was is because, you know, with a poor tile system, you have saturated ground, and so all of the rainwater most likely moves over the surface of the ground rather than soaking into the dirt. So maybe an important thing to note would be that, you know, the biggest reason why the creek would swell is the overland flow, the stuff that gets to the creek really quickly. And it would take, I don't know, a day or more for rainwater to seep through the dirt, find the tile systems, pattern tile or whatever, you know, hook up with the laterals and eventually end up with this large main. So the timing of those is different from each other. You know, the flush from the surface water will get there much quicker than the tile water. And if you can create a sponge situation, right, where the dirt is drained by a better tile system, maybe you wouldn't see quite the surge from surface water. And so I thought it'd be worth telling that kind of anecdote.
That's kind of what I said somewhat last week as far as, but I wish we had a crystal ball to know how it was really gonna work both ways. You know, it's, you can see the logic from both sides as far as, you know, if it's drier to start with, you might not have as much of a problem downstream, but yet if it is getting the water out upstream faster, you know, it's. Any comments, you guys?
So did Rick give any indication on what he thought the difference would be between the half inch and the 1 inch? I mean, is it gonna take another day or two for the really wet spots to drain? I mean, I know he recommends the 1 inch because you just get more pipe for your dollar, right? But it's hard to know, right? Without, to me, it's a bad day if we do the half inch and it doesn't drain.
Well, it's
Crop
gonna,
side, right? So,
it's gonna drain because right now, Rick says it's running at a 16th coefficient. Well, I think that tile is supposed to be like a 1/4 inch coefficient, so we're already gonna double the size with a half inch. And it sounds like the system's hardly working the way Rick says.
yeah, I guess I support the 1 inch just because for the extra, what is it, 15, 20%? I don't know what the difference is in cost.
30%.
I did the math on that. It's like 225,000, whatever the number is, whether it's to get double the pipe, just seems like it'll drain better. But I mean, as a person paying a big chunk of the cost, a half inch, I mean, it's another $75,000 less, right, for at least for our operation. And most of our acres are on that open ditch, so it's, I don't know, maybe I'm better off with the half inch. Just to me, the project is just better off. That's my encouragement to us, is what's the best bet
And you gotta
to get
somewhat,
it drain, so.
you gotta somewhat take into consideration, everybody sitting on this side of the room is downstream. And it's gonna affect if it's out of the banks, it's gonna stay out of the banks longer. It's gonna slow, our tiles are running slow already, it's gonna run slower. It's just a proven fact.
Unless, of course, the fact that the ground got drained quicker earlier before the, you know, I mean,
You're still gonna have a lot of runoff,
yeah, but you know, if you have back-to-back rates, you're gonna have it no matter what happens.
which we do.
And we do get that from time to time. You know, but like the initial, I mean, if it has time to soak in before the next one comes, it gets drained out because the tile system is better. Then by the time the next one gets there, maybe it'll handle it better. Like I said, I wish I had a crystal ball to see how it would
Yeah,
actually
it
work.
don't really work as fast as you're saying, I'm sure.
I know if you have wet areas now and you put vegetation like crops in it to absorb some of that moisture, you know, it does absorb, what is it, up to 1/10 or so per day it needs to survive.
Depends on what time the mature the crop is too.
Yeah. But
I'm just concerned there's gonna be wet spots for the Sundays in particular, and it's not my farm, but just for their benefit. I mean, I don't know if that half inch is wet down there. I don't know if that half inch is gonna get it out in time before the crop's gonna die. It may take 5 days and now there's no crop, right? So, now they're not, just a tough to pay for a project that doesn't drain here. It just seems to me it's gonna do a better job, the 1 inch for sure. For whatever the percentage is more. Just seems like it's the better bet for them.
Last week I looked at Jeff Mathis and tried to get his opinion. He was kind of caught off guard. He hadn't seen the information. He went back and talked to his family, and Jeff and Jay and Carol are all on board for the 1 inch now. They discussed it, and
They never wrote in, so that shouldn't even take effect.
I'm a trustee, and they talked to me personally, and there's no code that says you have to submit in writing. Those are taken, into account, but it is the way it is. I mean, and I've talked to Merle Robinson. He's in favor of the 1 inch. Carl Sunday has been quoted in the past as saying, I'm paying for drainage, but I've got no drainage. It's not working. And so,
But for us, for example, we paid to pattern tile our farms, and this is drowning out, or gonna make ours even that much worse and ours slower. So we paid for drainage that isn't gonna work. So what's the difference? I mean, you can't say one person's not gonna get drained, like Scott said, fast enough, because ours is already backing up and already drowning out all ours on the bottom side, so that's just gonna make it that much worse. And like you said, yeah, it's gonna work good between the rains in August, but by then our crops are already gonna be drowning out and gone anyways.
but I have to look at, personally, I look at who's paying the bill on this and the benefit the district is gonna get out of it. And this is a separate district that, yeah, it's gonna have to go down through the drainage ditch, but we're doing everything we can down at the bottom to try to make it work better. And we've already removed the trees. We're gonna be looking at cleaning the ditch down at the bottom. And we're hoping that will, and then we're also looking at possibility if we can work with the DNR to straighten it out too, to get it to the river quicker. Tim?
What kind of drainage coefficient has the county installed previously on projects?
Previously,
Yeah,
since I've got here, I don't know that we have done in the last 10 years, well, no, we haven't installed it yet.
No.
But prior to this, there was never any improvements. But the last Tuesday, we did approve a 1 inch coefficient up northwest of Scarville. And they were all on board with that. I don't know if there was any dissenting votes there.
That one is pipe all the way to the dredge ditch.
Right, all
That's
pipe.
deep.
Yeah.
It's not gonna overflow the bank.
And it's
like
only
this.
like, what, half a mile to the road is all they're doing.
All pipe. You have a problem upstream, but you're gonna turn that problem to a downstream problem, is what you're gonna do. You got two issues here.
Up by Scarville?
No,
Oh,
on
yeah.
8011, the original design of the ditch was a 24-inch culvert at the top, and you're gonna improve that considerably. Huge improvement. You're gonna compromise every system below.
Well, if the plans are to straighten the ditch if we can and clean it out, they may improve the whole area by the time it's all said and done.
But shouldn't we start there then?
You can't lower it lower than the Winnebago River. I mean, your outlet is the river.
We could probably, I don't know if I can get that online or not, but there's a pretty good fall from.
Do any of you guys know the grade from the Winnebago River to say half mile up?
That'd be another one for Rick Hopper.
Well, we can bring it up on our county website on town tours through the pictometry.
Be pretty. imprecise for that kind of measurement.
But
Scott, you're an engineer, can't you figure this out real fast?
Figure it out if I had it some
you can
data.
get a roundabout figure for like,
It just doesn't measure the bottom of creeks very well, you know. The land surface they can get pretty close on, but, you know, water surface can disrupt the measurements on there. So you might have
but if you
4 or
took,
5 feet underwater that it's not able to tell
if you
you.
took the point where it crosses the road there where we just put our new culverts in, down by Lee, and you take the point of the end of the ditch, that'll give you,
If they're on the same datum, I'm not sure if we have those two elevation points in a convenient way that we can compare them exactly. We could easily, you know, figure it out if we had the right data, but not sitting in the room right now, I don't think. Just my gut feeling is there's a pretty good fall there compared to normal, you know, man-made drainage ditches, because this is natural channel.
And as far as the lower end, you said that we should have started there. That's probably true, but that's just not the way it's proceeded, I guess. And we can start that project now. Well, the one thing, where are we at with the DNR as far as straightening
That's
it?
Rick Hopper's doing.
Please take care of that.
I think our process down there right now, according to Rick, is we're going to look at the ditch now come spring and see what needs to be cleaned. And, in the meantime, he's trying to work with the DNR to kind of mitigate putting a straight section in that ditch. But when you put a straight section in, you have to replace it with something else somehow. So they gotta look at that. So my big concern would be down at the bottom where the Ambersons, where it meanders through there where we remove the trees. But we are going to be working to,
And in theory, just the trees are supposed to improve it some.
yeah.
But,
Well, if the grade's not there, it's not going to. I know like the tile that goes into your brother's land up by Scarville, Jerry Ruckus told me, he said, if the Winnebago River's full, that ain't draining,
It ain't gonna,
you know, so.
and if you take 6 lanes of traffic and put it in 2 lanes of traffic, you're gonna have backup. I've seen it stopped on the interstate before, so water's gonna do the same.
well, if you
There's no.
add lanes down at the bottom end, I just hate to see you go with the half inch, and then if you take care of the problems on the lower end, that, you know, I want it to be better for everybody. I mean, the whole thing to work better, and if you can make the improvement good enough down at the bottom end where it can handle everything, then everybody can be happy.
But that's still just an if that would help it.
I don't think there's no chance you're gonna make it that way. Well, I'm not quite up to speed on half inch. I know what a half inch and 1 inch is. But aren't you gonna get the water anyway? It's just gonna be slower with the half inch.
And-
You're gonna get the same amount of water, I'm assuming,
Well,
right?
it's not gonna slow the surface flow down. I mean, if the ground is saturated and we get big rains, it's just gonna come down in the same path it always has on the surface instead of
But
through.
whether we go with half inch or 1 inch, the same amount of water is gonna come, it's just how fast.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the whole discussion is how quickly different water gets to the creek.
So, would you want it to come faster to get rid of it faster? Or no?
I think you'd want to sequence the timing so that you can use the capacity of the creek at different times. So that you send the quick rush first, and then the big tile, and then the small tiles, so that, you know, the creek that's so big can handle it. Just like, you know, at a grain elevator, if you can sequence the trucking, then it doesn't spill out onto the road, but if everybody shows up at once, you're gonna be backed up.
But the same amount of grain comes in.
Right.
You just gotta sit out on the road, tear up the shoulder.
There's an example of that over there.
I just know talking to Rick that he made the comment at every meeting, nobody's ever wished they could go back and make it smaller, but many people wish they could make it bigger, right? So this is the part that we're gonna drain it.
If you're
You
serving
drain
at the
it.
top end.
Do you appreciate where these guys are coming from, Bill?
Yeah, I do. It's a tough, yeah, I don't know if that's all District 11 stuff or if that's for outside of that, but that becomes even more complicated, right? Because now,
Once you put in the half inch, then you find out that it would have worked fine with the trees out and all that stuff, and then especially if we cleaned out the bottom end, it's kind of too late to put in the 1 inch at that point.
yeah, the best day is a half-inch drains it all. I know Rick was concerned about that that's pretty wet down there, and I know that at least for the Sundays and other people in there, to have to pay for it and then not have it drain out, that's a really bad day. Because they're probably got the wettest spot down there, right? So, and a half-inch to 1 inch, I mean, the 5-inch drain, it's not gonna drain out in a day anyway, but if it drained out in 2 days versus 5 days, it's the difference between having a crop and not having a crop, so,
But then in that 5 days, that creek is still gonna be plumb full, backing up, slowing everybody else's tile down, so we're just gonna get more drowned out. So it is just who does get the best.
Definitely will get more drowned out.
Going back to the paying for it thing, just like I said, I mean, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, 100%, I understand where they're coming from, they don't pay. We already paid it, and now we're getting the same outcome, ours is backing up, we already paid it, so, we're gonna say, well, it's not fair to them to pay it, not get the drainage, why is it fair to us to pay it and not get the drainage? It's the same concept, either way.
Well, and I'd like to see everybody get the drainage.
Yeah, I agree, I mean, that's like we talked, if there's any way to start at the bottom, then there's no doubt, but, that ship was already sailed.
No, we
Well-
are working on the bottom. I mean,
One thing that, with this was to see that the improved drainage on the top would help. And then the trees cleared out of there, whether that was gonna help at all, to see whether there would be the problem or not. But that's the $64,000 question is, what is it gonna do to you guys down in the lower end? And if we make the improvements, later and it takes care of it, then it's fine, but then if you've already done the half inch up top, and you should have done the 1 inch because everything turned out to work better. Do we have the cart before the horse? Evidently. I mean, it's
What are the odds that the bottom's gonna get straightened and cleaned and, what do you think?
well, if it needs cleaning, it's gonna get cleaned. That's a
Yeah.
repair.
the cleaning will happen.
We just got control of this
Yeah.
water, just last year. So we're in the process of doing it
And
right.
there was no straightening it while the trees were there.
So when that was just a private ditch, could they have straightened it themselves?
It was a natural waterway, is what it was. And so we do have limitations if we're going to improve. That's where we have to work with the DNR because of being a natural waterway.
And see, when we tried to do that on one of ours, we had to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they said, no way are you straightening that. Is what they told us. That was probably in 2012. They said, no way. are you-"
And Rick was talking about he didn't have much problem with the Corps of Engineers. It was the DNR he was working with on the next step.
And I personally believe we should be able to do whatever it takes to be able to raise more food for everybody. I hate having the DEP.
Well, it doesn't hurt anything. If you straighten that ditch, you got less erosion, you got less
Yeah,
issues,
yeah.
everything's better.
So we are working on that now that we have control of it. It is part of DD11 now. So it was, that area down there was, let go for just way too many years. The trees were really blocking it bad. So I guess, with the input I've gotten from the people that are gonna be paying into this, I believe it is in the best interest of the upper district to go with the 1 inch coefficient. So I'll make that a motion.
I'll
Tough
second it,
spot.
but, we just have to make sure.
Yeah.
That,
We're doing everything
we
we
move
can.
on with the bottom half as quickly as possible.
And it
I
should,
just hate to just go with the half inch now and then everybody later say, I wish we'd have done it the other way.
So then,
But- But then at the same time, I don't want,
so you're gonna cap it?
Half of those people in the top end were saying half inch.
So you're gonna cap it then if it
There's a
doesn't
small
stay in the
percentage of who's paying it.
Well, I suppose
Yeah,
that's one of the
there's still
options,
that.
but then they just wasted their extra that they went with the 1-inch coefficient, but,
Why don't you have everybody get a vote? Instead of just calling it in like that.
That's cut and dried with the state statute. That's,
And how do you weigh it? I mean, do you weigh it by the acre or do you weigh it by the person?
there is nothing we can do.
You know, we're gonna get terrible either way.
okay, and a motion from Derby and a second from Jensvold to go with, 1-inch coefficient. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Stay on these ones.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
Here's back to Scott.
Number 6, consider for approval joint powers agreement with Faribault County, Minnesota and the Township of Rome, Minnesota for bridge replacement project LD County N 7395.
I said it was cut and dried before they walked in the door. I explained the history of this agreement in the email, so I won't go over it all in detail. But this is an agreement between Faribault County, Rome Township, since in Minnesota townships take care of some roads, and Winnebago County. And the agreement basically makes the combination of Minnesota parties pay half and Winnebago County pay half. However, the last minute I realized, or I guess Kelsey told me that this agreement must be reviewed by the Attorney General, State of Iowa Attorney General, before it can be signed by the parties. So I have to ask you
Have
to,
the Minnesota Attorney General do that?
I don't know if that's, it would be up to the Minnesota statute. So in the Iowa code on a 2080, it's only because it's with another state.
Yeah.
That's why it has to go through the AG's office. I have no idea what Minnesota's requirement is on that. I sent it down last week after I talked to Scott, and it's gotten to the right person. I have no idea how long it'll take to get that back, but I'll follow up with them towards the end of the week and see if I can get kind of an estimate on that.
yeah. As far as 2080s goes, this is a pretty straightforward agreement, so hopefully it goes pretty quickly. So we do have our attorneys review, my review, their engineers review, and their attorney. Now we just need one more piece, I guess. But
So the Rome,
If the, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead.
if the Attorney General signs off on it, then it's okay.
then it's okay. Yeah, then it's okay.
Yeah.
All parties have agreed to the stipulations. It's
Just
just a matter of making sure that it's,
Yeah,
the document's written in the correct way. Yeah, just,
I don't foresee any issues. It just seems silly to have you guys sign it, and then if the AG's office comes back with, well, we'd like to make this correction, then you have to re-sign it. So I think it makes more sense to get the approval from the AG's office first, and then you folks can sign it. I've reviewed it. I made a lot of edits, because I think the Minnesota attorney had drafted it. So of course it didn't have any of the Iowa 2080 language in it, so we added all that. I think everything's in there, but just a matter of waiting until we get that word from the AG's office.
so we'll get it done.
Who are some of the people from Rome that you talked to?
Well, I've been dealing directly with the Faribault County engineer, Mark Daly, and I think he's been kind of taking care of that correspondence. I think that the township secretary has changed hands since we started this. Now it's Verlin Euban is the township chairman.
I talked to one of the guys that's giving grief about the last bridge they wouldn't partake in.
Yeah, you know, it's basically all we have to go back on is some of these county line agreements written in the 70s through the 90s, and because the roads go from township to county to township to county, there's so many roads that need to be addressed specifically, and some of them got missed, and this one is one of them.
Yeah.
So we can't just say, per the agreement, you pay half. We have to then kind of go through this multi-year process of trying to get it eligible for their funding sources in order for them to participate, because townships really have a pretty minimal levy, you know, and they don't just have room in the budget to, step up and pay 50,000.
Is there a time limit on approving this because of Matthew's contract? Because like our drainage bids, 30 days we have to have it approved.
Which one are you
Well-
asking about?
Which one are we on?
On the,
Oh, we're on 6, so I had written over number 7, so I thought it was all one. So.
we can move on to that one if you guys don't have more questions on that. Again,
Yeah,
we'll
we're just
we'll
tabling this one.
table it and I'll add it to the agenda when we can get approval from the AG's office. Okay, so the other one.
So where is this one at then?
That was number 6.
Yeah,
So now number 7.
the Matthew one is where?
Number 7.
Yeah. Where is it at? The project?
It's around Buffalo Center.
Where this is a contract covering multiple projects.
Okay.
All of the asphalt paving for this coming summer.
Okay.
Yep, so it includes 8 miles west of Scarville. It includes 3 miles on R50 north of Highway 9, 4 miles on A38 east of Leland, and then the approximately 2 miles on the periphery of Buffalo Center that are not, they don't have county road names, 440th and 10th and 12th Avenues. About 17 miles. So if you remember, we approved plans for each of those asphalt paving projects and they were tied together into one letting. So that means the contractor that's bidding on it knows that if they get one, they get them all. And we do that in order to try to leverage better bids. And bigger the project, the better we feel we can get companies that are further away to try and compete, because they'll have to basically build a asphalt plant at a site in the county or at the quarry and operate out of that plant. So we had 4 bidders on this project, and I thought that was a result of good plans and everything, and also good scale of the project, the size of the project that gets a lot of attention.
So
That,
total miles was what, 16?
I think 16 or 17.
So 224,000 is not bad for
A mile.
a mile, is it? I know when I first got on, we were probably doing it for 150, but
Yeah, I mean, construction costs are volatile, specifically for asphalt because it's oil-based. But yeah, we're continuously seeing
oil
costs.
prices are going down.
Well, yeah, I don't know exactly how they correlate. It isn't perfect, but
And what's the process here for, are they gonna grind it down, or are they gonna?
yeah, so most of the projects, the vast majority, they'll be cold in place recycling. So they'll run a train, they call it, of different pieces of equipment to mill up the existing pavement 4 inches. And they'll mix it with some new asphalt, a rejuvenating agent, and then they'll put it back down in a paver. And so that'll be a little bit wavy, and this is the same process we did on the last project. And traffic will run on that for a little while before they'll put the next lift on. They'll put 2 lifts, 1.5 inches each, ending up with 3 inches of new pavement on the majority. The roads around Buffalo Center, we're trying something a little bit new. It's new to our county, but it's being tried all over the state with good results. This high-performance thin lift overlay. And what it boils down to is that asphalt binder, the glue in the asphalt product, is more rubbery. So the thought is it'll kind of prohibit cracks from coming through the pavement and hopefully make the pavement last longer. So we're doing an 1.5 inch mill and 1.5 inch overlay of that high performance product. And with the low traffic volumes in that area, not a lot of truck traffic compared to others, we're hoping that we can get similar life out of that strategy as the cold in place and overlays. For asphalt projects, 20 years is kind of a good estimate, up or down 2 or 3 years depending on what the conditions are in the field.
Are they gonna use the stuff that you mill off, or are they gonna remix it and put it back down?
The contract allows the contractor to, well, it makes it their property. So at that point, it's up to them what they want to do with it. There's two options that I can think of most likely is they'll mix it with the shoulder rock and put it down as shoulder rock, or they'll bring it back to their plant and put it back into the mix. And since it's a known source, it's a pretty simple process to put it back in the mix. It just depends on how much they want to, where their plant is, how much they want to haul it back and forth, or whether they can stockpile it on site, kind of run it through a sieve and then put it right back down without hauling anywhere. That's maybe an option. It's really up to them. So we were recommended and felt that we would get the best prices by giving them the option to do as they please with it.
Did you look into tiling any of these stretches?
We have done a lot of sub-drains throughout the county over the last 30 or 40 years, and I'd have to see which ones of these are and aren't. Some of them already are. Specifically, I know A16 has been sub-drained. Not sure about the rest of them.
So it's possible that they would help, is that what you're saying?
The sub-drains?
Yeah.
Difficult to measure. You find different strategies among different county engineers and maintenance crews about whether they think it works or doesn't. I think it can definitely provide a benefit for the cost. I think that's where you'd see some discourse as to whether the money that you'd spend on those comes back in pavement life or you know, that kind of thing. Pretty much all you're doing is trying to get the most life out of the asphalt, and if you can drain the base and keep it from, you know, getting soft and see distress come through the pavement, then you see benefits.
A16 has stayed nice so far.
Well, yeah, what are we, 5 years in? Looks pretty good for 5 years, but yeah, the first 5 years are always the easiest.
There are definitely differences in strategies. There's one road over by Odebolt that they did years and years ago. And I don't know what that contractor did, but that's the one everybody should hire. I think it's still,
Asphalt road?
no, that's actually cement, and then it's cut at an angle every, I mean, that road is as smooth as the day they put it down. That's where it is.
Yeah, we have really seen good results from the concrete that was put down in 2009 and 10 or so, somewhere in there. You know, the one 244 here just north of town, and then the one that goes by Rembrandt. Those are really aging well, but again, they're in their first 10 years of life, and it's the 20, 30, 40 year marker where we see, you know, did the money stretch far enough? No, like I said, the bids came in well under my estimate, so you know, that alone, I think, you know, tells us we're getting good pricing for the method that we chose for rehab.
When was this supposed to start then?
They have a late start date by contract. If I have that with me, I think it's around June 1st. And then they have 90 working days. So we won't know schedule until we meet with the contractor, and we can do that once contracts are all signed by all the parties. Now, I don't think this is 90 days worth of work, so you know, at the very latest, you might see them, like let's say there's 30 days worth of work, hypothetically. They could wait 60 days past that late start date and cram the project into those last 30 days and still not pay any penalties. Otherwise, they could begin as soon as the temperatures fit the specs that they're looking for. You know, cold in place recycling, I think, has to be done between May 1st or June 1st in order to get the proper temperatures, because it's a cold process, so you want good atmospheric temperatures to try to get better compaction. So the specs kind of dictate schedule in one regard. So we'll know more in the next 2 to 4 weeks, I expect, schedule. But my guess would be midsummer.
A motion to approve the Angus '07.
Alright,
I'll second the motion.
motion Sedra and second Derby to approve the resolution to accept the bid from Matthew Construction Company in the amount of $3,810,625.80. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
This is a boilerplate resolution issued by Local Systems, so it looks like it's asking for all three of your signatures. And Chris, if you could sign for Carla.
Okay, number 8, discussion of possible action, retirement policy.
Scott had submitted
One
a
copy of that, what's the best version if I send you a
version of it that basically just made the updated changes to the dates. And the only other thing that changed, I believe, was the end date for employment would be the end of the year instead of May 31st. Is that right?
May 30th.
Reasoning, I wanted you to look at this again. I believe it's in the best interest of the county to have a little bit more overlap or a little more time to prepare for retirement. Because if we, especially when we're running this late this year, to have something done by the end of May, have something in place is almost not feasible. So if we were to pass this, we would actually put a date in there probably like before, depending on when it's passed.
I don't remember your input on it. I mean, Carla's, she sits up.
Personally, do you want my opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
again,
Well, you shouldn't do it at all. It clearly doesn't benefit the county. In the whole scheme of things, it doesn't benefit the county. We still have to hire somebody new, whether it's at a cheaper rate, whatever. We still have to pay insurance, we're still hiring, so it's saving the county a little bit, but not a lot. So, yeah, it's not easy to do it over 2 different fiscal years, but it can be done, and it will be done, whatever, but. I don't know if anybody else thinks.
What did Mike Galloway say, or what was his recommendation?
So I sent him this current version, I believe, if that's the one. Terry, this is the one you sent an email to Carla.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. I sent it to him. He didn't have much time. He was just able to look at it quick and he wasn't available this morning, unfortunately. I don't want to speak for him, but what I gathered is, I mean, these terms are fine. I don't know that he's recommending that you guys have the retirement policy.
But he says that every year too.
Well, for legal reasons, yeah, and I mean, this is what he does, this is what he specializes in, are these kinds of things, so if he's telling you that, there's a reason. I think I'm not nearly as familiar with this, of course, as Mike or anybody really. I've only seen this copy, I think. The problem I see is continuing to change it
yeah.
to meet the needs of one
We
specific
gotta put this
employee.
last living back.
Right. That's where I think you're going to run into issues. 'Cause I think, was it rescinded a couple weeks ago? I wasn't here for
It
that.
had more changes to it that really kind of
Okay.
reformulated the age and things like that.
Okay,
And so the basic change here is instead of the end of May, it'd be the end of December, But like I said, I think it's in the county's best interest to have more time to prepare for retirement.
And this is age 55, this contract, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Whatever we
because I
want,
know
yes.
Mike said that had to stay 55, it couldn't be changed to 60. I guess my personal recommendation would be to table it even for a week and hopefully get Galloway's firm opinion on it. I think, on this specific draft, like I said, he was able to look at it quickly, but he couldn't be here he couldn't be up here by phone this morning. That's just my thought. But yeah, the concern I think with both of us is just constantly changing it.
Well, is this a better change than the way it is now? Is this what we should adopt and then leave it?
What is it being changed from?
Well, it's,
Is it just the date? that we're
basically the date.
The date of term, of the retirement.
It's going from May 30 to December.
Yeah, it's gotta be May now.
And our-
Put it off to, or,
And our justification would be that in county's best interest to have that time to deal with it before retirement.
But how, for budgeting wise, how do you budget over 2 years?
That's what I was just gonna say, yeah. I don't know that there's a legal difference between May or December, that I can think of. Again, I would defer to Galloway because this is his wheelhouse. But it would just be those other concerns, like now it'd be over 2 fiscal years.
So Scott, since this might affect one or two of your staff, how would you address the budget question?
So we show it to be a savings, over multiple years. The only year that it would take a little bit of time to catch up is the first year, to the tune of about $5,000. And with, as much as our crew wages go up and down based on the hours they work and everything like that, it's something that we can fit in the budget as is.
I want to table it one more week and wait for Galloway's.
I would request if you get his review to put it in writing.
So will you be talking to Galloway?
I can,
Have him submit something to us?
yeah, I can ask if it's going to take longer than a week. I'll let you know that. I know it's a really busy time of year for them, contracts and everything, but I'll reach out to him today.
Okay.
all right,
Thank you.
okay. Auditor's office will discuss drainage matters.
I don't think I have
Hey,
any. Stick around, Dave.
Look at the time.
I don't have
Do
anything, so.
The other David Peterson wanted to talk to me.
On drainage, Mark would like to bring something up, and he asked me to print these ahead of the meeting, give them to you, and I emailed them to you too. Not looking for any decisions, just has some questions he'd like us to work on. So if you want.
A couple weeks ago, we talked about the Mount Valley wetlands projects there, and I know no decision has been made on it, and so I don't know where you're at on it, but I was asked to put together a few of the points in writing, what we talked about, and that's what I did here. Like I said, I'm not gonna read through everything there. You can look at them. I'm not asking for a decision today. But basically, we got two items that, you're looking at is approval of a new project, and then are we going to draw a line in the sand to say, okay, here's how we're going to monitor and maintain county drainage through those wetland areas? And I've addressed a couple of the points as far as ideas on how to do that. But the issue is, down the road, are you going to be able to monitor that line without threat of trespass, that somebody's going to actually be able to physically go down there? Because after vegetation gets up, it's impossible to see an issue from the road. So to say, well, if you see something, let us know, is really not a starter on that at all. You have to be able to physically go up and down that line.
We had discussed that, that
Yep.
we're gonna put in the poles and then someone gonna have to go up and
Right.
down it every now and then.
Exactly. And
and I'm not saying, here's how you actually do it, but strategically place items so that you can see that the tile is working and so that you can go up and down the tile and make sure that there isn't a hole where it's broken out. The discussion that day went a lot of different directions and need to keep it, in my opinion, focused on a couple issues. One of them is that current project and how are you going to handle it going forward. And then the issues on previous projects that aren't being maintained. So number one, we know, and they admitted that they don't have any course for enforcement or penalty of the vegetation clauses that aren't being adhered to in the existing contracts. So on this project going forward, if the county has the original easement on, in my opinion, you should be able to put a clause on that easement to ensure that that gets maintained and being able to be compensated for whoever has to do that maintenance.
That brings up another question. If you have an easement here, and you're gonna move the tile over here, up out of the low area, do we have to redo the easement?
I don't know that answer.
That brings up a question about that.
Maybe that's a county attorney question.
That's probably a drainage attorney thing.
Could be.
Probably.
I don't think I would vote to approve it without an easement. That, it could change ownership, and the guy could say, I don't, yeah.
And in talking to some of the others, that's one of the things they say, well, the DNR is gonna end up with, well, we don't have a crystal ball either, so you don't know if in fact that's the case. They have a pretty poor track record of being able to maintain or collect funds to do the maintenance on projects that they do have control of. So it is a concern, but we can't predict whether that will or will not actually happen. So that's why having something in place. Now, there was a lot of discussion, that, you're moving it, that's not going to be better, but as I look at it from an engineering standpoint, in some places, it actually will improve drainage. So, you guys have to look at it, is it maintaining or improving, and obviously not making it worse. But for instance, on that Buffington project, right north of my place, okay, right now that old Clay County tile goes right through the bottom of where they're proposing a water feature. I know it's only about 18 inches deep right there, and it's clay, so it has a tendency to freeze and break. If you don't reroute that or do anything with it, and you just allow it to go into wetlands, there's going to be cattails, there's going to be vegetation with deep roots that's going to get in and affect that county tile as it is. If it's rerouted with non-perf around the outside of it, you're going to be able to get more cover over the top of that tile, be less likely to be interfered with vegetation than what it is right now. So to use the argument of say, you're going to reroute it, you're going to affect it, it might be worse. I guess from an engineering standpoint, and I can't say that that's what's actually going to happen, but being able to actually monitor and be able to maintain and make sure that in those joints, we don't have roots affecting that area is critical going forward. So I hope that makes sense.
And did I forward you the letter that I sent to TJ? Can you forward all you guys in photo? Well, to the DNR
We didn't do it.
last week.
Well,
I sent
I haven't seen it.
I sent a letter to the DNR, to TJ Herrick.
Did you send it to personal or to the county?
Whatever I send you every day. Anyway, I sent a letter that said that we would like to have them maintain it, and how we'd like to have them maintain it, and he was gonna get it to his superiors.
Oh, now I remember it, yeah.
Okay, so that way his superiors could look at it and make sure that they do maintain it. Obviously, there's certain times of the year that they can't go out there with their nesting and all that, and that's fine. But I put in there that we would have, like, the drainage person go out and check it out once, twice a year and give any recommendations, give them a time frame. If they don't have it done, the county would take care of it and assess them for it. I haven't heard back. I'm assuming TJ got it because it was sent last week, so.
You know, one of the issues that gets touchy in Mount Valley, as being a Mount Valleyan, is that Mount Valley is really targeted for these type of projects, just how Mount Valley is. So the few of us that are trying to make a living out in Mount Valley, drainage is probably the most critical issue that I have to getting a crop. And as more and more of these go in, just as we stated, if you're not farming it, it gets forgotten, which is going to happen whether I put it in or anybody puts it in. So that's why I say going forward, it really is to the point to where we need to have a process to monitor it. And then ensure that it's installed correctly. On that Kingland wetlands, I talked to Lynn Kluver, and there was a section of that was actually installed improperly, but it was never fixed, and that was just poor contractor work. So is there a way that we can ensure that that doesn't happen? I mean, it can happen on any construction project. I've been in construction, I know that things happen. But we need to ensure that it's put in according to the engineered specs. I can't argue with the engineered specs on this project.
We did, but you're aware of it, aren't you? We did steer well, and if we could just,
The easiest way to get the people to maintain their properties is to have them make it to where they're responsible for the repairs if they don't. And I mean, that's and the question is whether you get the DNR to be responsible or not if they end up with it. Is there anything we can do to make sure, DNR doesn't get a hold of this project?
No.
No, and I don't think anybody's I'm not asking that I infringe on a landowner's right to enter this into a program that benefits them. And that's, most of the people aren't asking that. And I know that's a question that's coming up, but like I say, you can't predict the future or what's going to happen to it.
Against the DNR either. It's just that I can't stand hypocrisy, because if someone did something to them that affected them negatively, they would want something done about it.
Exactly.
And I just don't like people that like double standards.
As a landowner in Mount Valley, it seems like my tax dollars funding the DNR are coming in and taking land that I could be farming. And so they're saying, bend over, I'm going to shove it up this time to do that. And then down the road, when they get control of it, they ask me to bend over so they can shove it up farther because it comes off the tax rolls. And then there's fewer landowners paying taxes to do it. But, I don't think you can change that either. But if it's in the original easement to do that, they can't not adhere to that. Am I correct in that?
I would think so.
Yeah. I would think if we do everything we can to, in the agreement with NRCS.
Who oversees, does the NRCS oversee the contractor on those?
Because they're paying better.
Right, okay.
So I think for Mark's sake, we gotta kind of get it down on paper and then vet it through the process of our attorney and whatever resources we need to ask the DNR, work with TJ to make sure that they're being accountable. I think he's the perfect place to start there. And to make sure that we don't have any questions when somebody like this comes in and says, what's the process? We know what it is, bullet, bullet, bullet.
So look over, I'm not asking for anything today, but if I've missed something or you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. I think it's fairly clear and straightforward on it, and what issues we're talking about.
What's a good number to get ahold of you?
641-590-4400. And I don't know if I don't know that I've been chosen spokesman for Mount Valley, but.
No, but, yeah.
yes, you had.
No,
Brian Miller texted me.
You've got enough skin in the game.
And I know Brian Knudsen also talked to TJ's boss down in Des Moines.
Yeah.
About some issues, and that person sounded like they were unfamiliar with the maintenance issues. And Brian offered to take him around if he liked.
Good start.
Yeah, there's a ton of, you know, if you just drive, you can see any one of these projects literally have not been maintained. I included a couple pictures, but I could have included 50 pictures. It's irrelevant as far as the pictures. You know what we're talking about, so.
Yeah, bro.
Ross Miller does. Yep, so we've got access to as many overhead pictures as you want.
And I think that should be part of our process going forward, is have that equipment available to be able to maintain a view of it. Thanks for your work on this.
Is Jason a relative of yours?
Yeah, he is, my cousin, yeah.
Yeah, that was too bad.
Yeah, very unexpected.
He was a year ahead of me in school, and
I didn't have anything else to finish.
I don't have any.
Okay, number 11. Consider for approval amendment to Tyler Technologies agreement.
I did get a chance to look at that. I just compared the change sections or whatever, and it looks to me mostly like they're just kind of specifying the payment schedule. So as long as the auditor's office is aware of that, and I've talked to Chris about it, I don't see any reason not to adopt that amendment. There's nothing majorly substantive about it or anything.
you know, it looks like they're not asking for any payment until fiscal 22, and that's what we had talked about before in the meetings. So that was good.
Well, in light of that, I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the Tyler Technologies agreement.
Second that?
Motion Derby and second Stencil to approve the amendment to the Tyler Technologies agreement. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? By and the name, by is just me, right? Then what's the name? You gotta print it below it, or?
Probably.
Yeah, it's the third. Open forum.
Oh.
Cheers.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the semi-monthly docket.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion Stencil, second Derby to approve the segment monthly county claims. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
She didn't follow the agreement. No. be the most boring thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, that,
Didn't make them shut off the water. It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
work.
did you just stop up the toilet? Make them use this valve.
No, actually, there's, I mean, I don't know how picky you wanna get, but there is some shoddy work in the cells.
You got some, time to study it, did you?
Where the block meets the floor, tell you what, it's peaked, it's already breaking up.
Really?
Yeah. And, well,
Okay. There's a leak. You too.
oh, yeah, yes.
Sorry.
Does that stand? The all three of us signing on it.
I got some bad dust yesterday. I had a dry sump pipe that was plugged. I had to get the old brass one out of the cast and it's stuck. I had to rack it to get it out, clean it out, get it all done. And I followed those plastic plugs with the rubber expander,
Yeah.
but it was too big. Just barely too big. So I had to grind the inside of the hole out. Make it fit. And that was nasty. And I couldn't buy any masks.
When those guys left, they said that there was a predetermined outcome. I didn't make up my mind. And I have a hard time when you got two engineers.
I thought about asking, so if you were on the other side of the fence, how would you feel about it?
No, it's usually,
That just started over.
I've asked that people many times over the years, if, you know, if this was the other way around, what would you want? I just hope that it works out better than what they think it's going to.
It all depends on the year too.
Well, sometimes it just doesn't matter what you got.
You get 7-inch rain and another 7-inch rain a week later.
Yeah,
You aren't
you're
getting
done,
any
you're
rain,
done,
period.
you're done. And lots of times it backs up from the river.
That's their concern, is that they're getting water from here and here, but it doesn't really work out.
Well,
Which is understandable.
and that's, unfortunately, natural drainage just as good.
Well, because the DNR doesn't take care of the river.
No, it's not.
Is that the Army Corps?
Corps.
Yeah.
They did kind of give a favorable opinion of cleaning the range of Buffalo Creek, though, didn't they?
Yeah, nobody's ever given me $5,000 for
Yeah,
that,
that's just it.
so. They must have not wanted it that bad, they wanted it for 3 years, finally got to a meeting.
Well, they still want it, just you're wishing that third person would have come forward with some money, you know. You find a different third person.
And I told them that I was going to, a partial payment, because I didn't want to hold on to it and wait for the other parties to divvy up, so I said I just wanted one $5,000 check from someone, how they got it, didn't matter. Because I would have held that, like, $1,000 check or whatever for just over a year.
Sarah, sister Ann. The Heidi has her, they've all had carpets on the pictures. Figures. So I get, it's that one, anyway. Never my Vicky.
Right?
Vicky's never good.
Am I able to visit?
Yeah, they're doing pretty well.
Okay, because these were those sheets I talked to you about that I needed you to restamp on the
Oh, okay.
abatements that we did. So we already abated them, but I just need your signature and the stamp here from January 2nd. Because what happened was these figures here, the in-code tax wasn't, they added the dollar interest to the fee instead of into it. And she said it was a development issue. And so instead of using tax charge sheet, she had to use the charge history report to get the dollar to be where it needed to go. So, yeah.
Nice.
So I have the original. I have the way it is. If you want to sign and stamp it, probably that same.
January 2nd.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because we're not changing anything.
Right.
They're all, it's just, the totals all
The
stay
end
the
result
same.
is the same, yeah.
Just this back page has to sign and stamp it.
Yes. So it's like, oh, why, you know, how many of these for the DNR
Yeah.
that don't pay?
Have any discussion with it?
No?
Better start I got 3 sisters that already had carpal surgery.
Oh,
Sometimes my fingers are numb on me, especially if I've been working a lot.
sign again. So it'd be nice to get, here's some more, Gary.
Oh, that has to be stamped.
Yeah,
So there's 3 total, Julie?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
So
I'll
I'll
be,
be sure you get 3 back.
yeah, yep, oh, I'm watching. This has
Yeah,
been a
okay.
lot of work.
Do you need me to sign for Carla, or you gonna wait till she gets back?
She can sign it when she comes back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Whatever, if
Yeah,
you
no
wanna
worries,
do
no
that.
worries, I just haven't heard
Cause I
anything
have
on
her
it,
name
so.
on it.
Yeah.
You signed her name by you as deputy then.
Yeah, but if it can wait for you, if you can wait.
I'm just gonna get them done. They've been on my desk, and every week goes by and I can't get down here or I don't catch Bill and he's gone, so today I caught you.
Yes. I remember it when she told me about it.
I'll make a motion to approve the payroll claims.
I'll second. Motion Derby and a second for John Moore to approve the payroll claims. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? And we stand adjourned, I guess.
Should have waited. I didn't know they were in the middle there. All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You got it.
What was it, Carlos?
in Europe.